Today we're in the body shop doing an update on the 1960 Corvette. This is the last time you've seen it. I've body worked all the seams on the car since the seams settle. Over time the bonding adhesive settles lower than the fiberglass, so I went back and ground them down with some 40 grit and then put Duraglass over it, and then any little pinholes I put a little bit of filler on. So that got a lot of the low spots. Did the whole way around the car. I'm mixing up Duraglass that I'm using to put on the seams of the 60 Corvette. So I'm filling the low spots in the seams. I ground it down first with 40 grit, sandpaper on a little grinder, and now I am filling it in with Duraglass, and then it will be body work after that. Now that the Duraglass is dry, I am using 80 grit on the DA to rough it up, and I'm using this to pretty much body work the entire area just using the DA. And then after I finish that, I'm going to do a little bit of hand sanding before I put on a little. So the Duraglass is roughed down and it's really smooth between the joints. You can see that there's a little bit of a residue left over to fill it. I didn't use a whole lot of thickness in here, but everything came out really smooth. There was a really bad low spot in this corner before, but it came out really good, and it's just ready for a skim coat. So now I already put my skim coat of body filler on. I didn't film doing that. So I Duraglassed all of the seams on the car, all of the seams where there's two different fiberglass panels. The bonding adhesive in the middle will settle over time and sink, and in the sun you'll see that. So I ground that out, and then I put some Duraglass in there, and then to fill the little pits I put a skim coat of body filler on top, and that'll fill any little holes. So I have to sand all of that. And this side, like I said before, this car was on fire at one point, so they used a hand-laid panel over here that was overlaid on top of this bonding strip, which they only attached with like Duraglass, and they cut the fender underneath here way too high. I don't know if they forgot to account for the height of the bonding strip, because it should have fallen here, so they used a bunch of glass, and it's a shame because this was a brand new fender cap under here. It was never really used. It was primed but never painted. So we have a new fender cap, and it's just sitting on top, so there's a couple inches height difference. So once the old one's off, it'll settle down a lot further, and we have a new cove panel coming that's press molded, not hand laid. So I'm holding off obviously on doing those joints, but other than that there's really not a whole lot of body work to do. I don't know if there's any bad ripples in the car or not, but just doing the seams, and then once that's done and the car sanded a little bit, it'll be ready for primer. And then the trunk lid over here, these hinges have a tendency to crack around this plate, so this one cracked in a couple places, so I ground that back, so we'll have to reinforce that. But other than that, the panels are pretty much ready for primer. So let's have a little more hand sanding to do, and then that's pretty much it for that for right now until we get the rest of the fiberglass. but I might harvest this little headlight. I guess it's like where the bezel attaches to this little insert. Might harvest that because we're gonna need it for this piece. So I'm gonna start the process of removing the passenger side fender cap. So here's the new fender cap sitting on top of it that we got from Shermershine. I removed the top of the fender cap just by cutting around the edge, just rough cutting it. Of course I forgot my camera this day that I started cutting on it, so just bear with the pictures. I'm just taking it off piece by piece and just using a hammer and chisel to get it off. Once I get the big pieces out of the way, I'm just being very careful not to damage the inner structure. And here are all the small pieces I've removed. And with the new piece laid on, it fits perfectly. We just got our replacement fender in today, literally just half an hour ago this showed up. And last week we got the fender cap. So I need to take the sheen off of this like I did this guy. But it's the correct ivory color. But it looks good. I removed the old one last week, which there's many pieces of. I took it off in a bunch of pieces because they're seamed in the middle here. There's lots of seams in here, so I didn't want to break the car. And I don't want to damage the fiberglass that we're still using, but everything fits up good, and it has the same exact cuts that the other one had. So it'll fit up nice. And I also removed the bonding strip off the old one. That'll get bonded on here. So we'll see, but maybe next week we'll clean up the underside of this glass a little bit more. I got it roughed up. This one needs trimmed. Now that we have this piece, we can fit it up and cut it back here because it's a little longer than this patch. So we'll get that fitted up, bonded, and this thing will be ready to start being body worked, and it's ready for primer once we get this corner situated. There's a big crack that went across here, and this plate was breaking out of the trunk, and the cracks went over here and down here, and they kind of went all over the place. So I just ground everything down, ground the cracks out, and filled it with some fiberglass, and then just put a little bit of Duraglass on it. I had a couple little spots where it just had like air pockets, so I just used like a little bit of filler and just spread it across there to fill any low spots. So it looks good as new, and the funny thing is you'll never see any of this. It just has to be strong. But it's perfect. When it's sprayed with some of that slick sand, you'll sand that and it'll be perfect. So now the trunk, the hood, deck lid, doors, and those little access panels are all ready to be primed. So that'll be next on the agenda for this. We'll get those primed. And while those are drying, this thing will be ready for sealer. We'll spray that, and then once that's drying and we're sanding that, we'll be painting that car. And then by that time we should have the glue to glue this fender on, and we can let that sit. We can start body working that, and while that dries, then we can go back and sand on those panels, and then this thing should be ready for gel coat or for the primer, and get that whole car blocked out. Then it'll be ready for sealer, and then it'll be ready for paint. So we're getting close. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. We got a lot going on with the 60. And we got a couple other project cars I'm going to be working on next week. So give it a thumbs up. Be sure to tune in, subscribe. And I got a lot to work on. So I'll see you guys next time.